Hi, this is Matt with AppliancePartsPros.com. Today we'll be showing you how to repair your appliance. Remember, anytime you work on an appliance, make sure it's unplugged or the circuit breakers are off so there's no chance of electrocution. Also make sure you turn off your hot and cold water supplies. In this video we're going to show you how to change out the Samsung dryer steam water valve kit. It's going to be a very easy repair and should only take a few minutes to show you how to do it. If you already have one of these, great. If not, you can click on the link below or get it at AppliancePartsPros.com. When you open up the package, you're going to get the new steam water valve kit. The steam water valve kit is located inside the dryer at the back, and it's what supplies the water to the steam system. The main reason you'd be changing it out is if the solenoid has gone bad and you're not getting any water, or the valve body is cracked and you're getting water on the floor, or the injector is clogged and it's not injecting the steam. In order to get to the part, we have to take the dryer apart, so we're going to use our Phillips screwdriver and go around back to remove the screws. Now that we have the screws out, we can remove the top. All you have to do is pull the top back, so a couple inches so it gets free of the brackets, and then you can lift it off and set it aside. Now that we have the top off, we can take the control panel off. There's a few locking tabs across the back. We're going to lift up on them to release them, and then lift the panel forward. Once you have the control panel released, we can pull it out a little bit so we can disconnect the wire harness. All you have to do is press on this locking tab and pull the two ends apart. Once you have it disconnected, we can set the control panel aside. We can open up the dryer door, and we need to remove these two screws at the bottom. We're going to use our Phillips screwdriver to take them out. Now that we have those two screws removed, we can close the dryer door and remove the upper four screws. Once you have the four screws out, we can take the front panel off. You may have to open up the door and lift the front panel a little bit so it comes off these two little locking tabs. Once you have those free, you can let it drop down a little bit. We can close the door again and drop it down enough so we can disconnect the wire harness for the door switch. There's no locking tab or anything on this one, so all you have to do is pull it off and let it set out of the way. Once you have that disconnected, we can lift the front panel off the three mounting brackets on the bottom. With the front panel off, now we can remove this panel that holds the control panel. We're going to use our Phillips screwdriver and take the screws out. Now that we have all the screws that hold the support panel in, we have to get ready to take it out. First thing we're going to do is disconnect the wiring harness from the light bulb socket. All you have to do is reach down and pull it off. And then we have to take it out of the little retainer. So you can just twist these and release these. Once you have them open, you can just pull the wire harness out. Now we're going to lift the panel off so we can take the ones off from the back side. Now that we have the panel rotated forward a little bit, we can see that there's these four connectors. All we're going to do is untwist them so we can take the wire harnesses out. Once you have all of them disconnected, we can pull the front panel off. And then we're going to take the wire harness and drape it over the side of the machine so it's out of the way. In order to remove the bulkhead on the bottom of the dryer, we have to remove this one screw with the Phillips screwdriver from the blower housing. And then we have to disconnect the wire harness connector for the moisture sensor. And that's on the other side. All you have to do is press this locking tab and separate the two connectors. Once you have those disconnected, we're going to use our Phillips screwdriver to remove these four screws that hold the bulkhead to the cabinet. Now that we have everything disconnected from the bulkhead, we can lift it off the cabinet. There's a tab on each bracket that we have to lift up and pull out. Once you have both sides off, you can lift the front bulkhead off and set it aside. Now that we have the bulkhead out of the way, we can reach in underneath the drum on each side. We're going to grab the idler pulley and pull it towards the outside of the dryer and release the tension on the belt so we can take it off the pulleys. Now that we have the belt taken off the pulleys, we can use it to guide the drum assembly out of the dryer. All you have to do is lift up on it so we can guide the drum through these little cutouts. Now that we have the drum out of the way, we're going to remove the heater element so we can take out the rear bulkhead. We're going to use our Phillips screwdriver and remove this screw. And then we can lift up the heater assembly and pull it out of the back. You don't have to pull it all the way out of the dryer. You can just set it down so it's out of the way. Next, we have to remove this water line from the water valve that goes up to the steam sprayer. It's located on the left side of the dryer in the back. You might get a little bit of water coming out of it, so we're going to throw a towel down just so it doesn't get on the wire harnesses. Then we're going to remove this little locking tab. Samsung puts these on here so the hoses can't slip out. And then we're going to take a small wrench, maybe like a 3/8, something that'll fit over this water line. We're going to use it to push in this collar to release the locking tabs, and then using your other hand, you can carefully pull the water line out of the valve. Now that we have the water line disconnected from the valve, we can go around the back and continue taking the bulkhead out. Right above the water valve on the left-hand side, there's a little wire harness holder that we have to take out. All you have to do is untwist it and pull the wire harness out. Now that we're on the back side of the dryer, we can use our Phillips screwdriver and remove the 6 screws that hold the bulkhead on. Now that we have all the screws out, we can lift the rear bulkhead off its mounting tabs. All you have to do is lift it up about an inch or so. Make sure they're off the tabs and pull it out the front of the dryer. Make sure you don't hit the control board or the element. And once you have it out, you can set it aside. Now that we have the bulkhead out, we can lay it down on the ground so we can remove the sprayer part of the kit. It's held in by 2 screws. We're going to use our Phillips screwdriver to take them out. Once you have both screws out, we can feed the nozzle assembly. All we have to do is pull the water line out and then feed it through the front side of the bulkhead and pull it through. Now that we have the water line disconnected and the rear bulkhead removed, we can take out the towel. You want to save that because we're going to have to disconnect the water line on the back of the dryer in a minute. But for right now, we're just going to disconnect the 2 wire harnesses from the steam water valve. You want to remember where they are. Remember the blue ones towards the middle of the dryer and the white ones on the back. And you want to remember that where the wire positions are. You got the double black in the white and then the double black in the red. All you have to do is pull down on these to disconnect them. Once you have them both off, you can just lay them down, and then we can go around to the back side so we can remove the valve. Now we're on the back side of the dryer. We're going to put a towel down so we can remove the water line that's connected to the steam valve. We're just going to grab it with the pliers and loosen it up. Once you have it broke free, you can use your hand to loosen it. And then we can grab our Phillips screwdriver, and we're going to remove the 2 screws that hold the valve in place. Now that we have the screws out, we can go around to the front and pull it out. Here's the old steam water valve kit next to the new one. If you already have one of these, great. If not, you can get it at appliancepartspros.com. To put the new spray assembly in, we're going to lift the bulkhead up again and feed the water line through the hole. Once you have it through, we're going to turn it and point it down towards the bottom so we can line up the screw holes and put the screws in. Once you have the screw started, we can use our Phillips screwdriver to tighten it down. Once you have both screws tightened down, we're going to rerun the water line through the little holder. All you have to do is push it through, and so it's in there so we can hook it up to the water valve when we put the bulkhead back on. Before we hang the steam water valve onto the rear of the cabinet, we're going to put this screw in to this hole, the one closer to the solenoid, because we can then set it through the panel on the back of the dryer, and it'll hold it while we go around back and tighten this screw down and put the other one in. You don't have to put it in all the way. Once you have it in just enough, you can reach back and put it through the hole. Once you have it in, we can go around the back side and tighten down the screws and reattach the water line. Now that we're on the back side of the dryer, we're going to grab the steam water valve and line up the screw hole so we can use our Phillips screwdriver and put the other screw in. Once you have it tightened down, then we can go over and tighten the other one. Once you have the water valve secure, we can reattach the water line. We're going to get it finger tight and then tighten it down with our pliers to make sure we get a good seal. Once you have the water line secure, we can go on the front and reattach everything else. Now we can reattach the wire harnesses to the solenoids. Remember, the white one was on the inside, and remember the red was towards the back, or this arrow right here is actually towards the outside of the dryer. Same thing with the blue one. There's an arrow on it. You want to make sure it's pointing towards the outside of the dryer, and that way your wires will be in the correct position. Now we can put the rear bulkhead in. You want to very carefully feed it through the dryer cabinet and make sure you don't hit anything. Once you have it in here, we're going to hook this side on first, and then on the other side you may have to lift this wire harness out of the way and then hook the tab on. Once you have it on and supported, we can reconnect this wire tie. All you have to do is put this wire harness through it and twist it back together. Now that you have the bulkhead mounted, we can use the Phillips screwdriver and put the screws in to hold it in place. With the bulkhead in place, we can reattach the water line. The new valve comes with the locking tab already in it, so you don't have to worry about it. All you have to do is take the water line and very carefully push it all the way into the water valve. You want to make sure it goes past the O-ring and all the way up to where it's seated all the way in the valve. They put a little dot here, which will tell you that it's seated all the way. But you can put your hand on the water valve and just kind of push against it. You want to make sure it's all the way in there so you get a good seal. Now we can put the heater element back in. You want to very carefully lift it up and line up those two tabs in the back. Make sure your wire harness isn't caught on anything. Once you have those tabs lined up, you can push it back into place and set it down. And there's a little tab up here on the front that you got to make sure it goes into the bracket. And then we can use a Phillips screwdriver and put the screw in the front. Now we can put the drum back in the dryer. You want to make sure that the pink is towards the back, the belt is centered in the drum. Then you can carefully use the belt to lift the drum up and guide it back into the dryer. Once you have the drum on the rear rollers, you can set it down and let the belt go. You want to make sure that the grooves are against the drum, so when you route it through the pulley, it's routed properly. We can reach in and route the belt through the pulleys Same thing as before, we're going to grab the idler pulley and pull it over towards the outside of the machine. Then we can make a loop with the belt and put it around the pulleys. Now we can put the front bulkhead back on. We're going to hook in these two tabs on the left side of the dryer. Once you have those in, you may have to lift up on the drum a little bit so the drum goes over the rollers. Once you have it in place, we can lift up the tabs on the other side and put them in. Now that we have the bulkhead back in place, we can use our Phillips screwdriver to put the screws in. Now that we have the bulkhead mounted, we can reattach all the wires. On the right side of the dryer, at the bottom, we're going to reattach the wire harness for the moisture sensor. All you have to do is plug them back together and make sure you get a good connection. Now we can come up on the left side and grab the main wiring harness that went across the front, and we're going to put them through the clips across the front of the bulkhead. All you have to do is put them in and twist them. Remember to leave your door switch kind of hanging in the middle. Once you have that in place, we can reconnect the wire harness to the light socket. You can't mess this one up. It's a 1/4 inch on one side and 3/16 on the other. So all you have to do is line it up and push it on so you get a good connection. This connector is for the control panel, so we'll connect that later. With the wires properly routed, we can put the support bracket back on. We're going to line it up with the screw holes, and we have to attach the wire harnesses to these holders. So we're going to lift it up a little bit and put those on before we put the screws in. All you have to do is grab the wire harnesses and put them onto the holders and twist them so they lock in place. Once you have that one in place, we can do the one for the control board. And then you want to make sure that this little connector goes out to the front so we can reconnect it in a minute. And then we can rotate the support bracket down into place. There's a couple locking tabs on each end. You want to make sure those go into the frame holes. Once you have it in, we can go around with our Phillips screwdriver and put the screws in. You may have to lift up the control board cover on this one to get the holes to line up. With the support bracket back in place, we can put the front panel on. To put the front panel back on, all we have to do is set it onto the 3 brackets at the bottom of the dryer and rotate it up. You want to stop a couple inches away from the bulkhead so we can grab the door switch wiring harness and plug it in. There's no locking tab or anything on this one, but make sure that this little notch here lines up with that notch. And all you have to do is push it together to get a good connection. And then we can push the panel up the rest of the way. And you want to push it up so these locking tabs hold it in place. Once you're sure it won't fall off, we can grab our Phillips screwdriver and put the 4 screws in across the top. Now that we have the top of the panel secure, we can open up the door and replace the 2 screws that hold the front panel onto the lint filter housing. Once you have those 2 in, we can close the dryer door, and then we can put the control panel back on. To put the control panel on, we're going to set it on top of the front panel so we can reach over and connect the wire harnesses that connect the control to the dryer. All you have to do is push them together so they lock into place. Make sure you get a good connection. And then we can lift the panel up. You want to make sure that these locking tabs right here go into these openings right here on the top of the panel. Once you have the tabs in place, we can rotate the control panel up and snap it onto the support bracket. Once you have it in place and it's secure, we can put the top back on. To put the top back on, we're going to set it down on top of the frame, and then we're going to push it forward so the lip right here goes underneath that bracket. Once you have it in and lined up, you can push it forward, and then we can use our Phillips screwdriver to put the screws in. Now that we have the top back on, we can plug the dryer back in, turn the water back on, and take it for a spin. Thanks for joining us for another successful repair brought to you by AppliancePartsPros.com. Check out our other repair videos on our site, Facebook, and YouTube.